From the dawn of man, indigenous people from every corner of the globe have spoken of things that have now been discounted as myth or legend. Things they saw, lived alongside by, were looked upon as deities or worshipped by gods. Things that present-day man refer to as entities, spirits, demons, cryptid creatures, extraterrestrials, and much more. But sadly, modern man, science and society has discounted what our ancestors spoke of as legend and myths. But there are those of us that know what the ancient ones spoke of is the truth. Those of us who are obsessed with finding out the truth. This search for answers brings us into the world of the unknown and unexplained. It brings us on the trail, in search of living legends. Please join us tonight in another part of our journey to find these answers and bring the truth out into the light. Welcome and thank you for listening.
Hey, welcome everyone to another edition of On the Trail in Search of Living Legends. It's 6:15:25, and it is
beat me to
8
it.
o'clock p.m. I'll even throw the time in there.
8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yep.
You're right. This is it's going to be episode 13, season 7. So we've got a great guest for you guys tonight. Nick, what do we got cranking tonight?
Okay, Luke, how you doing there? This is Luke Gross. Luke's the former founder of the Texas Bigfoot Research Center down there in big old Texas. That was way back when. Now he left it, went on his own, and been doing a heck of a lot of research. How you doing here tonight, Luke?
Doing great. How are you guys doing tonight?
Excellent,
buddy. Thank you for coming on. We appreciate it.
Looking
no
forward to
problem.
this. Looking forward to this interview because I didn't realize you had so many Bigfoot down there in Texas. You got a lot of mountains over there in Texas?
Not a lot of mountains, but a lot of forested area.
A lot of forested area. Ah, okay.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of swamps, and it's actually a perfect habitat here. A lot of wildlife, and as you know, we have a lot of feral hog. The feral hog population has just exploded, and of course that's a major food source not only for mountain lions and any other predators like that, but Sasquatch or Bigfoot in the same. Because I'm sure you've heard stories of wild hogs getting killed by Bigfoot, and that's happened. As a matter of fact, I used to go into an area. Matter of fact, it was behind my house in Golden, Texas. They had a wild game processor that would process the game, and the property probably a half a mile behind my house. They would take their carcasses and they would dump over there. They wouldn't they would dump them. And my youngest son and I would go over there and hunt. And one evening let me say this, but prior to that, I've been having Bigfoot activity close to my house or at my house for several years. And that's a story within itself. But we would go hunt over there, and this time we went into the area. A tree got pushed over, and my son went on to his spot, and I'd never been to my spot. My son said, "Follow this. I've got you a stand set up in there, or it's a box blind actually." And I'll say, "Okay," I follow the trail, start to go into the area. All of a sudden, I hear stuff getting tore up all around where I was supposed to hunt. And I knew what it was. I said, "Hey," I just held my hand up and said, "You guys can have it. I don't want it. Thank you." And so he went on to his stand, and bam, he had a tree pushed over. And he said, "I'm sitting here." He said, "I don't care what happens." And he said, "I've got a rifle. I'm not scared." I said, "Okay." Nothing ever happened though. But he tells me, he says, "If they get too frisky, I will shoot them in the eye, Dad." I said, "Well, good luck doing that and making it out." From what I found out, there's always more than one. There's 2 to 3 that's traveling, at least down here. Up north, I'm not sure. But I know in Ohio, there's always more than one. I have a really good friend that researchers there, and she tells me, yeah, it's there's always more than one here too.
Same in the Northeast where I am, it's the same way.
Yeah.
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 They're never alone.
Yeah. I just finished watching one of you guys' podcasts, and I was listening to Miss Benham, Angelique Benham, and she was talking about the weight. And I couldn't agree more. I found in this one area we researched this one area for 7 years, and it was in a deep remote area off the Sulphur River in Northeast Texas. And there was a family group, 2 family groups, but the family groups were separated by the river and a lake. And I noticed the first time I seen a baby footprint was there, and I looked at it and I said, that's incredible, the depth of the footprint, just of the young. And I said, the muscle mass and the density has got to be crazy, and I knew the muscle mass was from the sighting I had in 2001. I had a really, really good sighting. No, it was in 2000. And it was walking down the fence road by my mom's house, and the muscle mass on the back, it was almost like it was a hunchback. The muscles were just massive. And right then and there, I knew that this was the bone density and their muscle mass was completely crazy compared to ours. So, but I just wanted to mention that I'd seen that on your video. I thought I'd say something about that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, because I've said that for years. I think people underestimate the weight, of these things. I just think they're a lot heavier than people realize.
Over the years, doing interviews with people, and I'm well past 1,000 different interviews. People calling me up, talking to me about it, sending me Facebook or emails. Over the years, I've had several people say, well, I shot a dog man and I hit him right in the chest and he didn't even flinch, or I shot a Sasquatch. I said, you shot at them? I said, and you're still, around the tilt the tail. And they said, well, I hit him with a high caliber bullet, a 7mm Remington, and one guy hit him with a 308, 200 and something grain bullet, and it said it didn't kill him. And I said, you got to take into account the thickness, the bone density, the thickness of the muscle. And I mean, these things don't have fat on them. They don't go out and eat, Dairy Queen or any kind of cakes or anything like that. Unless of course a human's going to leave it for them. In which case, if you're leaving it for a Sasquatch, you're in trouble. I don't know if you know that, Luke, but people should not gift them food, because if you don't keep doing it every day, they're going to get mad. And then
then you're going to have problems.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what they have to take into account, that the thickness of the skin, the bone density, thickness of the skin, the muscle density, it's just, that bullet's just going to stop there, and it's not going to take them out. I mean, basically, your son was right. You're going to have to shoot him through the eye to get to the brainstem. So, but you're right. Definitely.
It's not that I would shoot one. I wouldn't.
Right. Neither would
I enjoy the research, and I don't get to go out in the field as much as I used to. I got a bum knee, and it's hard, but I've collected a lot of data over the years, and so and there's some other things that took place. You was talking about don't feed them, which I wouldn't suggest anybody do unless you're going to be out there every night doing it. And but I wouldn't suggest it for anybody. But there's other things that take place also that a lot of people don't understand. There's like it was in November of 2009 in Golden, Texas. I was outside. It was a nice evening. It doesn't get really super cold here in November. I don't know. It was probably about 55. I was outside grilling chicken on the outside on my grill. Had a little jacket on and cooking my chicken, and all of a sudden, a rock lands right beside me. Boom! I'm sitting there, and I've already had encounters and know when a rock comes in, what it is. There's nothing else out there that can throw a rock. It's got to have thumbs, maybe. But anyway, I just stood up and I turned around and walked towards the direction, and there was a vapor light outside, outdoor light. And I just walk over there. I had this old dog kennel about, I don't know, 3.5 foot long and 3 foot high. It was actually a cage. But I just picked up some branches and I snapped them and I held them up in the air and I looked in the direction I thought the rocket came from. And I laid the branches on top of this old dog kennel in a pattern. And I went out there the next day, and a pattern had changed. And it was one long branch and 4 branches across the long branch, just laid down across the branch, and it changed. Wow. And I said, well, and I've been seeing these symbols. I call them syllabic symbols. A lot of people call them glyphs. I've been seeing them in the woods, in the areas I've been going to. You walk down a trail going into your area, and you come out the next day, and there's this glyph laying right next to the trail. And you say, what's this? And I used to see them all the time and never put 2 and 2 together until that happened. And I said, they're communicating with one another. Well, come to find out, they will try and communicate with you with these sticks. A lot of people claim they know what they are. I founded a study. It was called the Sasquatch Syllabic Study. And it was 4 years long and had people scattered across North America, ranging from Canada, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Maryland, Texas, and Oklahoma. And I asked them, after the study had started, I said, place this symbol out in your research area and tell me what happens. And they placed the symbol out, and they got the same response that I got. But this was continuing. And this went on. I did this. I used this symbol and several other symbols, and got responses from them. And one of the people, Tina Harder, from Ohio, I said, okay, Ogam, the Ogam language, it was an old script. The Celtics used it, Irish, and it's a long form of lines, and you just lay a lot of sticks across in a long line, probably 3 foot long, and use 12-inch branches and a 1/2 inch wide across this long branch. Well, I said, put this out in your area. You have more activity than anybody else. And she got a response back on a Celtic Ogam symbol. And it was an Ogam symbol, but the reply was Ogam. So to me, that's the same. They're saying Ogam. They know what it is. And maybe I've jumped. I've had a lot of encounters, but maybe I've jumped over those to get to that point. But you can stop. My point was, you can feed them, and if you don't feed them, they'll get angry. But if you stop using these symbols with them, they'll come up and slap the side of your house. They'll crawl up next to your house, and they're watching you. They're waiting for you to come back and interact with them. And one of the members of the study lived in Oklahoma, and she placed a different symbol out in her area, and she had to walk down a creek and around this small bend. And she walked down, and when she come to the bend, there was one squatted down manipulating the branches of this symbol.
Oh, wow.
It noticed her, and it jumped straight up and over into a huge brush pile. And she actually took pictures of this Sasquatch or Bigfoot in this pile of brush. And you can see it just, it's a blob squatch, but you can tell that something's there. It's a dark brown color. So they were interacting. And we decided after that if they're going to interact with that and be more, be able to get closer to people and not mind people as much, it could be dangerous. And there's a lot of people saying dangerous for them. And there was a lot of people out there claiming, well, this symbol means this symbol means this. Well, we did it for 4 years and we only found out what 2 symbols mean. 2. And there is a total of 128 different symbols that they're using in their syllabary. 128 different ones. So far, that's when the study ended. The study ended because my house caught fire. But I've placed them in different areas that in the field and had the same responses. I've told, had a gentleman come on I've gotten to be friends with, and I said, hey, take this. I showed him a picture of it, a sketch. I said, make the branches 24 inch, the main branch 24 inches long, the other one's 12 inches across and a half inch around, and put this up in your area. He did, and lo and behold, he had the same response. So this is happening from Canada to Pennsylvania.
Luke, how many of the 12-inch branches are in the
Four.
Four
It's
12-inch and one 24-inch?
Yeah, a half inch in diameter or around. So
right.
Yeah, but
Wow.
that, and I was shocked, and I said we need to look into this more. And we did. We released 5 videos on the study, and they're under Bigfoot Under the Radar, which was years ago. We released it in 2014, and it was fascinating. You could see, you could tell there's always telltale signs of how they make these different symbols, and they start with the bottom branch, and then most of the time, the vast majority of the time, they move to the right when they made their symbols. They put one branch down, then the next branch went down to the right. I'm working on some stuff now. There was on that pattern I was talking about. I'm using AI now to attempt to decipher this one pattern of symbol of what the meanings are, and I'm close right now. So I'm in hopes that would be a first type of communication that we could use. I'm not batty wonkers. I'm not crazy, but that's what's been going on. And I dedicated a lot of time to the study, along with a lot of other people. So, but that's just part of it.
That's interesting.
Luke, when you were out there researching, what part of Texas did you go to? North, south, east, west, northwest? Or?
Well, in the beginning, it was kind of everywhere, wherever our report would take me. And then with the research center, we decided, well, let's get as many people as we can and spread out and gather as much information as we can. But I found, and that was called chasing ghosts, is what I called it, basically. But I found that if you find an active area, stay there. You're gonna learn a lot more. That was, of course, after I had left the research center, but it was being more productive in the northeast part of Texas, up along the Sulphur River. That's heading towards Texarkana, Boggy Creek,
right,
and in that area. Any of the rivers, they're there. I live not even 2 miles from the Sabine River, where I'm at, and that's a huge river that runs through the state. And I've picked up reports 2 miles from my house here. So,
well, see, that makes sense, because a river, they're going to need water for survival. A river also provides food, fish, and other animals go to the river to take water.
Right.
So that's more food sources for the Sasquatch.
oh yeah,
It makes total sense.
oh yeah, yeah. They always, like Smoky Crabtree says, they always follow the water, follow the creeks, and they do, We found a lot of footprints. The one I posted a video. It wasn't too long ago on my Texas Bigfoot page. It was called The Primordial Forest, and it tells the story of what happened to myself and several of us that went into the area. And it was my second trip in, and the second trip into this area, we were stormtrooped out of the area, roared at and stormtrooped out. The whole story, it's fascinating. It just it was scary, but I kept my cool, and everybody else did. I had my 12-year-old son with me. That was what I was concerned about.
Yeah.
You know, after the roar took place, we have all our spotlights out and we're turning them every which way. Looks like a UFO landing. So everybody's leaving, and we're following the trail heading towards the boat because you had to get to it by boat. And
wow.
we were heading towards the boat, and I stepped in a hole and sprained my ankle and just went boom down that quick. And the guy on point, he had a shotgun, and he turned around and he looked at me. It was like, crap. So, and while I'm down, my son, he's looking at me and he's pointing to the left, or yeah, to my left. He's saying, "Are you hearing this, Dad? Are you hearing this?" And this thing was coming up, just tearing everything up, getting close to us, but it never attacked. It never came. If it wanted to, it could have. But
yeah.
it shadowed us out of the area until we got in the boat and took back off downriver. But that was a beautiful place. I told the guy I was with, I said, if I'm ever going to research here, I want to go in the trees. He said, okay. We built the research stand that slept 6 people and was 20 feet in the air.
Wow.
So we had everything set up, and it was the most active area I've ever been in. There were 2 family units that were there, or pods, whatever you want to call them, family units. And but you never found one family footprints in the other family's area. They never met. I thought that was kind of strange. But yeah, there was a lot of things that happened there. A lot of stories, a lot of reports came out of that area. Just a lot of guys. One guy, he was stormtrooped out of the area. He was bow hunting, and he went into the area, hiked in, got in his tree stand, climbed up the tree, self-climbing tree stand, got up, got all set up, and said all of a sudden he heard what he thought was sounded like something had slammed on the ground, like some pigs getting killed or something. And then the tree was in had low hanging branches, and he said all of a sudden one of the branches just got pushed to the side, and one of these Bigfoot just looked up at him, and he just let the tree line back down. And he said he just started going up higher in the tree. And so he waited there. And he noted it was getting dark. He said, okay, I've got to come down. Everything was quiet, didn't hear anything. And he's coming down the tree, and he goes to unhook his safety harness, and he had a carabiner on it. And he dropped the carabiner and he hit that stand. He said, just one little ting. And that was it. It was on. He said it bull rushed him right out of the brush. And he said he took off running, left everything there, took off running. And he said it was making the weirdest moaning, weird sound as it was chasing him. And what he didn't realize until after he started running, there was another one there, a smaller one. And it would run up ahead of him on the trail while the bigger one pushed the guy forward. And he had other guys in the area that hunted, and they had walkie-talkies. He got on his walkie-talkie and he said, y'all meet me at the end of the trail. I've got one on me right now. And he said it got to the point where he got so tired is that he just stopped. He turned around and he shined his light at it, and he said, if you're going to kill me, you big SOB, you better do it right now. Just kill me. And the thing just threw its hands up over its eyes, and it never did. And so he turned around and took off running again. And when he got to the end of the trail, the boat was at the end of in the water at the end of the trail. He dove off into the boat, and they took off. And when they took off, they heard a big splash just around the bend in the river. Said that was it. And needless to say, he went back out there and got his tree stand. Got his tree stand, and he had another encounter there too. Then there was another encounter of a guy, older gentleman that had been fishing, had his dog with him. He was catfishing. He had a gunny sack. This is a long time ago. And he was walking, had a gunny sack full of catfish, walking along. And all of a sudden, this thing peeks its head out from behind a tree. And he says, Oh my goodness. And he described it. The first thing he said was the shoulders on this thing. And he said he just slowly pulled his belt off and made a loop out of it and put it around his dog's neck. So then he laid the catfish down. He said, if you want these catfish, you can have them. I'm leaving. And he just walked right on away. Nothing ever happened to him.
Yeah. Interesting.
And a lot of different, I mean, that's from the same area that we were researching in. And several different other stories had taken place also there. One guy had went in on the other side of the river and went to his hunting stand, and all of a sudden he noticed there was two of them that was watching him. And he said he decided to leave, but he managed to get a fire built, and he got on the radio. He said, hey guys, I got men, they're all around me here. And he had fires built, and they were running close to the fire, right next to him, just running by him, across. And he said, just leave me here, just leave me, because he was a fairly old guy. And the guys went ahead and went into the area, and he was just sitting there, just shivering and terrified by the fire. I mean, that's so in that certain area, they were always aggressive. And it took us over a year before they wouldn't be aggressive with us in that area. Now, as far as getting this, they would come up and throw branches at us while we were up in our stand. They would come down and throw branches up. And we left them 50-pound mineral blocks, you know, the brown blocks you feed cattle.
Yeah. Yeah.
We would tie them up with paracord, probably 8 feet off the ground, and put horse and mule feed on top of them, just a pile. And we go the next day, that whole block was gone. They would take them every time. You could lay one down on the ground or on a log, it would be gone. And we took them, what else did we take them in there? I think we took them cantaloupe, but that was before I decided never to feed them. But anyway, that area was amazing. And it got to a point, things didn't work out, and we kind of separated, and I decided, well, I'll do my research in another area. So, and as far as I know, the one guy I was with is still researching there. Now, here's a story that happened in that area. We'd found a tree. It was a hollowed out tree at the bottom, and there was a small sapling actually that had been broken off and had been used to gouge out the inside of this tree. And to me, that was the first sign of tool usage. I said, okay, yeah, they're using tools. And so we'd left, did our 10th weekend there, and we left, and we come back the following weekend, and we went to this very same tree, and there was trail tape hung around this tree.
Oh, wow.
There was probably 6 pieces of trail tape with coordinates marked on them. And this was way, way, way in the area. And I'm sitting there, okay, how did this happen? And of course, accusations got thrown around. Oh, you told everybody where this place is at. And I said, nope, that's it, I'm done. But somebody had found the area. And but what I found interesting was the trail marker tape. But that's the first place I'd ever seen those symbols on the ground. But then my first sighting, that was the scariest sighting I've ever had. That was in 1984 outside of Greenville, Texas, at my mom's house. My wife and I, we would come from, I lived in Dallas at the time. Actually, it was Garland, Texas. And we would go out and we'd spend the weekend with my mom. She lives in the country. And but I will say this, I would have never thought Bigfoot would have been in this area. It was kind of ranch land, but it had fairly wide beltways of forested area that had lots of wildlife, lots of deer, and there's cattle, of course, in the area. But yeah, 1984, I was out there visiting. My wife had went to bed, and all of a sudden, my mom, she had 15 cats, and she fed them on our front porch. And I'm sitting there going, okay, this is a lot of cats, Mom. It's a lot of cats. Yeah, it'll be okay though. But anyway, this was in November again, and it was probably 9:45, something like that. We was watching TV, and she had her door open, and it was a mobile home, so it had a glass door on the outside, and she had the inside door opened up, and she's in her recliner, and I'm sitting next to her on the floor, and she kind of leans over and taps me on the shoulder, and she says, "Do you see that?" And I kind of lean around and look, and there's something standing sideways where she kept out probably 4 huge pans of cat food, dry cat food, on this little bench outside. And when I leaned over, it turned and walked towards the door, probably 1 step for it. And it just stopped in front of the door, and its head was above the door. And it went a couple of times like that and turned and 1 step right off the front porch. And I scooted back. I had short pants on, and I got rug burns on my butt from scooting back so fast. But yeah, that was the most scared I've ever been. And even when the roar happened, I wasn't as scared because I was kind of expecting something to happen when we got stormtrooped out of that area. Then we had another pretty scary encounter in Hallsville, Texas. It was an old slave cemetery. Myself and some of my buddies that I'd researched with, I can't remember who it was, but they said, "Well, I want you to come to Longview, Texas, and come to our little paranormal conference and talk about Bigfoot." So we all went up there and, told them what we did and everything, showed them some footprint casts. And so we went and got coffee at a Starbucks. And then one of the guys says, "Well, let's go to this graveyard I know of." Okay. He said, "We'll go do some EVP sessions and stuff like that." So we went out there, and my wife's riding with me. And this is way out in the middle of the country. It's an old slave cemetery. And so we went, and we was going, and my wife looks at me and she goes, "If we find a Bigfoot out here, I'm going to kick your butt right now." And I said, "Well, I don't know." It is. And we got to this cemetery. There was 11 people there. There was paranormal researchers, ghost hunters, and of course Bigfoot people. And we go up to the end of the cemetery, and everybody's kind of milling around. And one of my buddies, we went to this corner, and my wife and I said, "This don't feel right. Something's not right here." And so we're just kind of going around. All of a sudden, this call comes out from the northwest of us, and it wasn't a wolf. It wasn't a coyote. I didn't know what it was. And I kind of called everybody to the middle of the cemetery. I said, "Hey, has anybody ever heard anything like that?" And a lot of the people there were hunters. They, big outdoorsmen. And they said, "No, I've never heard anything like that." So I said, "Okay, I'm going to do something." So I made an owl call, a barred owl call towards the area this howl came from. Well, a barred owl call came back. It was the sorriest sounding barred owl call I'd ever heard. It was terrible. It wasn't a real owl. And then I said, "Well, let's take it 1 step further. Let's go just a little further." So there was an oak tree in the middle of the cemetery. It was a big one, but they'd trimmed some branches off of it, and I guess they were about this big around. And so I walk over and I grab one of these branches about, I don't know, 2.5, 3 feet long, and I whacked this tree once, twice, 3 times. And after the 3rd time, all hell broke loose. I mean, it went nuts. There was roars that come from the direction of that barred owl call, roars coming out of the creek on the other side of the cemetery, and roars coming from the other side of the road, all at the same time.
Wow.
And everybody, me and all the Bigfoot people, we went towards the woods. All the paranormal people went to the center of the cemetery, and because they didn't know what was going on. And so then rocks started getting thrown at us out of the creek. And my buddy's standing by this pecan tree, and my wife starts walking towards the creek. And I said, "What are you doing? Why are you walking that way?" "Well, that's where they are." I said, "No." I said, "You get back here, you're going to get hurt bad." I said, because they were mad when they roared at us. They were mad. They didn't want us there. and here's the thing that kind of sealed the deal for me. And there was another one of my friends had to go to the bathroom, so he went out the little gate that was there and started walking up the road. And he said he seen something cross the road. Well, there was two people with them, and they'd seen something cross the road, and there was a light way at the end of the road, and they could see it. So they get done and they come back into the cemetery. Well, next thing you know, they're after they come back in, this truck starts coming down. This is way out in the country. This truck comes flying down the road, and there's a little bridge where this creek was at that went over the creek, and this guy got to the bridge and slammed his brakes on. All of a sudden, you hear, boom! Something big got hit. And so this guy kind of backs up, and he just floors it and burns rubber and takes off out of there. Well, I'm saying, oh, I know what happened there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I guess it was about 10 minutes later, the sheriff's department showed up, and the local wildlife department showed up. Now, why would the wildlife department show up out there if something weird hadn't happened? Or, maybe a deer jumped across the road, but I don't think there would have been a deer there with all the things that had been going on. But after they showed up and left, you could hear this call way off in the distance to the other side of us, just like this, oh, and it was over. And one of the girls that was with the paranormal research group, she'd actually collapsed and was catatonic in where everybody is at. And to this day, she can't remember what happened.
Wow.
It really, really, really scared her. But that was just one of the many incidents that's taken place, in this through so many years. After I remember I was bow hunting. This was in 1983, before I even had an encounter. I was bow hunting in an area behind a lake called Lake of the Pines, and my brothers and I, we went out there and scouted the area. Said, okay, this is a good area to hunt, and I picked a really prime location. There's a lot of deer sign, good trails, and so I built this little stand up in this old willow tree. And so, okay, it was opening day. Went out there, climbed up in my stand, and all of a sudden I was there probably half an hour. It was about 4:30 in the morning. I hear, boom, a tree come down. Okay, I'm thinking, okay, swamps, yeah, maybe shallow root system, and fell over. And then another one comes down. Boom. And after the third one came down, I was really, really worried. And I had one of those little cloth covered folding stools. I was young. I was in my 20s then. And I just sat there. Nothing ever happened, but I never seen a deer, which I should have. I should have seen so many deer right there. But I didn't know what it was until after the fact. I started researching and found out that they do push trees over in areas. Yeah. Pretty common, actually.
Luke, your tree stand could have been next.
Yeah, exactly.
It could have been. You're absolutely right. Thanks for telling me that. Now I'll have to think about that now.
No, seriously. I mean, I've read reports. I've spoken to people that have seen it. They uproot trees and then put them upside down back into the ground.
Yep.
And from what I understand, that means stay away.
Yeah, right. I ran into that, I actually ran into one where the roots, they had ripped the tree out of the ground, shoved it in upside down, and tied the roots together.
I mean, look, the massive power that would take just to take the tree out, and then even more power to put it down upside down into the earth. Unbelievable.
Totally crazy power. A lot of power.
I mean, a gorilla has the strength of like 12 men. A Sasquatch, I'm sorry. What is it, about 50? Maybe 100? I mean, my gosh, depending on their size.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely amazing.
And, you know, a lot of people, they'll look at a tree that's broke. I heard a tree break over, and they'll go and they'll see this tree, you know, this big around, and they'll say, well, no, that's too big. No, it's not too big.
No, not at all.
No.
And the area that my sons and I hunt, or were hunting in, we never killed a lot there, never got a lot of deer, but it was 4 miles from where all that stuff I was telling you earlier, where we built the big stand at.
Yeah.
We were hunting in that area, and we would go in there and never had any problems. I'd seen some signs that they were in the area, but we'd hunted there for maybe the first year we hunted, no problems. The second year, it was another story. We would go into the area, and my youngest son, had brought one of his friends along, and he said, well, I want to stay out here in a hammock. Okay, I'll be all right. Okay, he says, I'm covered. That's okay. That's good. And so we all go to bed, and I get up the next morning, get all the guys up, getting ready to go out, and I don't see him in his hammock. And I'm sitting there, So I walk over to his truck, and I open his truck door up, and right on the headrest of his truck is laying a 44 Magnum, and he's sleeping in the back seat of his truck. I said, what's the matter? He said, Mr. Gross, there's a lot of big things that are out here in these woods, and it was pushing things over on the other side of the road last night. I said, oh, okay. I said, I bet you don't sleep in your hammock again. Nope, won't do that again.
Nope.
Yeah, but it got to the point that it didn't matter where we set up at or where we camped at. It was along one road where we would set up camp, but it was inevitable that when we were getting ready to go out, on the other side of the road, a tree would get pushed over. Boom. And I'd tell my son, my oldest son, I said, now, you know what that is? He says, Dad, trees fall over in the woods all the time. Yeah, but every time we get ready to go out in the woods, trees fall over?
Right.
No. Well, anyway, this time, I can't remember. I think it was in October. It was in October. I think it was 5 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe. But I've been hunting this, my son and I hunted this one area, and it was probably a mile in. We'd go half a mile to a mile into this area. And I'd found an old growth log tree that had fallen over. And it had one main branch that come out. And I said, well, that's a good place to set up a camouflage blind at. And I hunt on the ground there. So I'd had mesh netting behind me and camouflage burlap in front of me. So, and I always use a grunt tube to hunt with, deer call. And he would go about 150, 200 yards away. And so I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I start hearing, I guess we'd been there probably 2 hours. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I hear these weird sounds coming from behind me in the tree line. You hear stuff getting broke and tore up behind me, just back and forth with these sounds. I knew what it was. And so you know what I was hunting with that day? A 243.
No, boy.
No. I said, nope. I said, I know what I'm going to have to do. So as this thing's doing its number, I stand up and I grab my grunt tube and I put it to my lips and I blow as hard as I can. And it went from where it could have been a big buck grunt. It went all the way up to this high pitched squeal, the highest pitch, almost like a whistle. And when it hit that one tone, everything shut down behind me. Nothing. It stopped, totally stopped. So I get my phone out and I text my son. I said, you need to get down here. I got one right behind me. And you know what he texts back? He says, come on, Dad. I got deer right in front of me. I'm sitting there. I said, no, I said, if you don't want to walk out of these woods at night by yourself, you better come down here now, because I'm leaving. And needless to say, he came, and we left. But that's the only encounter that I ever had while we were hunting there.
Yeah.
And, But it was nerve wracking because he was a good
Sure.
ways off, and there were so many, and I know why there were so many wild boar there. There was herds. We've seen a herd of over 100 pigs
Over
in
a
that
hundred.
area. Over
Wow.
100 pigs.
Mm.
It was just blowing. And my son decides to shoot one with a bow. Okay, so he shoots it. Well, it's in the evening, and we're a ways in. He doesn't make a good shot,
Mm.
and we're tracking, and we're tracking, and we're tracking. We come up on the hog. It's not dead. I said, you better poke the hog, make sure the hog's dead, or do something. And he goes up, and this hog just explodes and takes off into some really thick brush. Well, it's dark by then, and I would have tore every bit of brush up, but our flashlights were dying.
Oh God.
They were getting dimmer and dimmer. I said, Josh, I said, we're going to have to come back here in the morning. Just mark this up, put a location mark on here, and we'll come back. I said, but I'm not going to be out here in the dark. Not with no lights. No way. No way. Not, there's too many snakes. I mean, there's snakes, water moccasins, this big around.
Yeah.
Huge, copperheads, and it's bad. But anyway, we left, and we went back, and we never could find the hog, which was a shame. I hated that. But
do you think maybe the Bigfoot grabbed it?
it's possible. It's possible because the scent of blood. I don't think anything else could have drug it off. It
Right.
was there on the spot. So yeah, it was. The area is prime. That whole area up there along the Sulphur River is prime. You would hear vocalizations when we would pull into that one area 4 miles away. We would back the boat down the boat ramp, and when we'd get out, they would call on the other side of the river. You'd hear them call, and then another one would call back. It's like, okay, they're here, hello. And then we would be hunting, and you would hear this. If you remember you ever heard the Ohio howl?
Yes.
Recording?
Yep.
You would hear this call coming from way off in the distance. I'd tell my son, do you hear that? You hear that? He said, Dad, it's just a coyote. And I said, it's not a coyote. Listen to it. It's low, deep, and it's a moan.
Yeah.
He said, nah, Dad, you just got Bigfoot on the brain. Well, the thing about it is he had a sighting where I had my first sighting at. He had a sighting there too. And he decided right then and there he doesn't want to have anything to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. And it really scared him. He was, I think, 11 years old. And it scared him so bad that he doesn't want to have anything to do with it. Now he'll go out in the woods and he'll hunt. And both my sons are huge outdoorsmen, hunters, trackers. They've guided hunts before in Colorado and stuff. So they're big outdoorsmen. But that one really bothered him. So, and I can imagine being 10 years old and seeing one.
Oh God.
My aunt was visiting my mom, and I'd lived on the same property as my mom. And of course the kids would come over to visit grandma, and I would walk over to visit her. Well, my aunt had come to town and was visiting my mom. And so I was out there visiting, and all of a sudden the door just flew open. And I told my kids, if you're ever going to come to grandma's house, you knock on the door first. And the door wasn't knocked on. It just flew open. And he comes in saying, Daddy. And I said, where'd you see it? I said, come on, let's go. He said, no, I'm not going out there, Dad. That was probably a bad idea on my part to try and get him to go back out there. But I think it really, really messed with his mind a little bit as far as don't want to have anything to do with them. Now, me, all of it. I want all of it. I mean, I love it. I still do. I still go out, and I've been working on hiking, getting my knee back in shape so I can get out again. But it's so fascinating, and there's so many things that people don't know about Bigfoot. There's a lot more to them than what people know. There's things that I have not experienced that a lot of other people say they've experienced. And I can't say they're not experienced it because I haven't, you know. It's
Right.
like, okay, I've always been I have to experience it, and then I'll say, okay. But there's a lot of things. Well, it's like I was telling you about the symbols. A lot of people say, well, you're crazy. I would have told myself that years ago. I would have said, you're totally crazy. I would have said, and the first thing I said, it's a big ape. It's a big ape. It's a big ape. No, they're not big apes. That's
way more to it. Way more to it than that.
Yep, there is. I'm kind of curious as to how you guys started.
I started. I had a sighting back in 2001 on my family. We own a lot of property up here. I come from a logging family, and I had a sighting in 2001 on one of our properties. And after, I found, like you were saying earlier, Luke, either when you have a sighting, it either scares you so bad you don't want anything to do with it, or you become obsessed. And I'm like you. I became obsessed with the whole thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I got started in cryptozoology and stuff like that. And Nick's been at it a while too.
Yeah, I started in the paranormal, and then by the end of my teens, I somehow slid into cryptozoology, and I was studying just the big three at the time, and then I had my first sighting of a dogman in September of 2013, and I mean, I didn't even know what a dogman was, Luke, at all back in 2013. Uh, and since then, I've investigated it and been out there in many field researches with teams, photographed and taken footprints of, the footprints and the claw marks, and had a sighting along with D.A. Roberts at Kentucky LBL.
Oh, wow.
A few years back. He had a straight on view of it. I had a sideways view of it. Only thing I've never seen a Sasquatch. I've tried. I've been to Oregon. I've been to Canada, upstate Washington. Heard the tree knocks. I heard the howls, the moans. I have not seen one. I can imagine what that must look like. After seeing a dogman full on, that must be spectacular too.
Yeah, that is.
I couldn't. To me, I see a Sasquatch and I say he could kill me.
Right.
But what if I was to see a dogman, I would say he will kill me.
He's gonna kill me.
Yeah, that's because I've heard a lot of different stories. I've heard Texas stories, and I've spoken with him about what he's seen, and
right.
There's areas around here that I won't go to. I get such a bad feeling from going to these areas.
Yeah,
and it's like no. And of course, where's Tex go? He goes to these areas, and there's a lot of weird stuff that happens. I've seen Bigfoot, and I've seen UFOs or UFPs, whatever you want to call them. And but heck, I've seen one. I've been out in the field, but do I connect the two? No, I don't. I think it's just. But what I did find is that in areas of high paranormal activity like UFOs, ghosts, there's Bigfoot in the area.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the correlation is, but I have found that because my mom moved a new mobile home in onto this property, and not much longer than a year, it was haunted.
Wow.
This was a mobile home. And before that, the Bigfoot were pretty pissed off about her moving this home so close to their travel route, because they would stage across the road from her house along this fence line, and there was a big group of trees right there, and they would stage coming from a 50-acre lake up to this road. They'd follow the fence line and the trees, and they would stage to make sure there was no traffic or cars coming, just like looking both ways, I guess.
Yeah.
And then they would come across the road, and travel on their way. That's what the one was doing that I seen walking down the fence row. And but I have, and the only reason I knew that one was coming because I heard it before it. I had a run in with one in Oklahoma, and it made this swishing sound when it moved, swish, 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 and I heard the same sound. I was just had left my mom's house when it was in that one in 2000 that I seen that one, and I heard the swishing sound, and so I got behind the cedar tree and watched this one walk down the fence row with the massive muscles on its back. But yeah, the swishing sound. But they would stage there, and my brother and I heard the same sound on the other side of the road, and I told him, I said, "Hey, let's go over here." So he had just planted some pretty good sized pine saplings. And so we snuck down the edge of these pines and just got to the edge, and we started hearing these flat feet, pat, 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 going across the road. And they obviously went over into a dark area and went because we didn't see them under the light. I've heard the footfalls, heard footsteps, and recorded footsteps and recorded different vocalizations and a lot of crazy stuff, especially when I had those symbols put out. I had a digital recorder hung up right above the symbols, and they don't care anything about those. You can put them out and they'll walk right up to them. Don't put a game camera out though.
No.
At least not here.
No.
Haven't had any luck. And it's like, you don't want them here, put game cameras out.
Yep.
But they're really fascinating. They can see the infrared, and it's like, okay, I'm not going to go over there. But I did get, I put a camera out and had a little brown bat flew in front of the camera and set the camera off. And I got eye shine from behind the tree that was looking in the direction where the camera was. But you could just see two big eyes behind the tree. And it's like, thank you, bat. I appreciate that. If it wasn't for the bat, I wouldn't have got the eye shine. Yeah. So, but it was pretty cool. That area was cool. There was a lot of activity in Golden. And then there's another town, probably 10 miles from where I lived. That's called Mineola. And somebody that worked in a nursing home there heard that I was a Bigfoot researcher, and they'd come up. I was at a store, and they approached me. I guess they knew who I was, and they said, "You're Luke, right?" And I said, "Yes." They said, "I got something I got to tell you. There's a lady that lives within the city limits of Mineola that has Bigfoot coming onto her property." I said, "Well, how do you know this?" She says, "She told me so." And so they would come up and pound on the side of her mobile home and break trees over. I said, "Well, where does she live? Give me an address." "Oh, she doesn't live there anymore. She moved." And they'd actually scared her so much she left. Yeah. So I went to the property, and there was tree breaks there, and the mobile home was gone. And I went through the property, and there was a railroad track right behind her house. And so the first thought, I'm sitting there thinking, oh yeah, you've had a bunch transients moving up and down the tracks, hobos. And so then I got up and looked, and there was more tree breaks going down on her property from the railroad tracks. But I looked on the other side of the railroad track, they were clear cutting a huge area on the other side of the railroad tracks. And I'm sitting there, you've got a pissed off Sasquatch, and you're the closest human at night because they're clear cutting that area, taking all the timber out of the area. So, right. And then there's another lake there. It's called Cedar Lake. My son and his buddy was going fishing out there, and they got in their canoe and they were going to take off and go. And another canoe come by him, and the two guys that was in the canoe said, "You guys don't need to be out here after dark. Don't stay on this lake after dark." And well, I come to find out later, I picked up 3 reports from that lake. The pretty aggressive encounters. One of them, all young people down there, having a good time fishing, and have their truck pulled down, and there's a big berm that goes up, and then the lake's down on the other side of the berm, and you park back here. Well, all of a sudden, this kid comes running up over this berm, and he's yelling at his buddies, "Get in your truck, we need to go now." Well, just as they take off, this thing comes over the top of the berm, this big thing, and it's chasing them down the road. And I'm sitting there going, okay, that's a cool story. And then another from the same group of guys, except this is later in later years, they were down there fishing, and all of a sudden this roars and moans and weird sounds started coming out from the tree line. So they got their flashlight and they sat there and seen this big set of red eyes. Well, one guy had a 30-30 and took a pop shot at it and hit it. Pissed it off. So they're saying, what the heck was that? Well, all of a sudden they hear some pounding going on, and it's one of their hoods of their truck got totally bashed in. It just hit it and pounded it. Wow. It didn't beat it all the way in, but it just hit it so hard it bent it. And that was that one. And another one, some campers who went down there. This is just out in the middle of the country, little country lake. And they had a camper shell on. Well, one guy's they're laying there in the camper shell sleeping, and all of a sudden their truck starts rocking. And this guy grabs his 357 and he's firing out of the camper shell, putting holes in his camper shell as he's climbing out to see what's going on. He's shooting kind of blindly. And I'm sitting there going, that could have been somebody rocking you. And he said, no, there was something huge was pushing our truck. So that was, of course, they have food in a Coleman, setting there.
Cooler,
yeah, Coleman cooler. Thanks. I'm getting older and I forget more. It's crazy.
Oh yeah.
but that area. Matter of fact, the county that I live in is probably the county that has the highest ratings as far as sightings go. It just has it ranges from. It's got two rivers that run into it. You got the Sabine River, and then you have a lot of the main creeks, which are basically small rivers that run from it. Lake Fork Creek is one. Matter of fact, there was a documented sighting over on Highway 184 of one coming across the road behind the dam of Lake Fork and going into the area behind the dam. That's on the BFRO website. So definitely something that people should look out for.
Yeah.
But as far as don't hit one, I've heard of one getting hit outside of Sulphur Springs, Texas, and they roped off. Military came out and got it. It was stuck in this woman, the windshield of her car, and it was still alive.
Oh my God!
How was she?
Yeah. And no, she made it out, but the military came in. They got it, loaded it up on a flatbed military truck, and left with it. And that was the last anybody ever heard of it.
No, man.
There was another story that come out of the Horde Bottoms, which is it's off Highway 19 between Sulphur Springs and Emory. There was two hunters out there. They were coon hunting, and they was out there and they saw this set of eyes. And the guy said, well, it's a coon up in a tree. Well, he's shot. Well, it wasn't a coon up in the tree. It made a weird sound and took off. They heard it moving. And all of a sudden, the guy that had shot it was grabbed. He had bib overalls on. He was grabbed by the bib overalls up and lifted. He was lifted off the ground. And it actually hit him and it cut him across his chest. Now, I can't verify this.
Yeah.
We tried to, but it was reported that he made it to the hospital, and the sheriff's department come to the hospital and said they paid him $400 not to talk about it.
Oh man,
talk about it. And
wow.
Well, he did talk about it. We learned that years ago. Yeah. So that was a very aggressive encounter there. And then along the same road, there was one seen walking in an old cemetery just on the east side of Highway 19. It's not a real highway, but it's just, like a farm to market road, basically. Right. But yeah, that area is real real active. Everything's connected. You know, everything. I'm sure it's the same up in you guys' areas. Connected by water. Everything's connected.
That's all you got to do is go for the water. Are you anywhere near Fort Hood?
No, not near Fort
Hood. I have a lot of friends that are still on active duty, and they're over there, and it's a very active area, not only for Sasquatch, but for Dogman, and they do, they roll out there, and they're out there at nighttime and everything, doing maneuvers, and there has been so much reported there. It's just absolutely amazing. Jay, we're kind of out of film time.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Luke, you probably have a lot more to say. I mean, we're going to have to do a part 2 sometime with you, if you don't mind us coming back to you.
Absolutely.
No,
I really appreciate you coming today.
Yeah, well, it's my pleasure, guys. I'm glad to be here. Yeah, if you want to do part 2, I have this much more to say. So
okay, we'll bring you back on for another episode.
Definitely, Luke.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. I've enjoyed it. I really have.
Oh, good, man. I'm glad. Thank you. Thanks for coming on. I enjoyed it as well. You had some good stuff to talk about.
All right.
Awesome. So yeah, everybody out there watching, we're gonna have Luke on for a second episode sometime in the near future, and unfortunately we run out of time, but we will be back next week for another episode. Luke, we want to thank you one more time for coming on. It was awesome.
Thank you, Luke.
And,
no problem. I enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you, man. I'm glad. Everyone, join up with us next week for another episode, and we'll have another good guest for you. All right, everyone, have a good evening, and everyone be good to each other. God bless.
Good night now.
Thank you.